and welcome back to Blake's New York Kitchen. Today we're going to be making something special, it's English Cottage Pie. Now, it's also shepherd's pie. Let me explain. If you were making this with lamb instead of beef, it would be called a shepherd's pie. And if you were making it with beef instead of lamb, it's called a cottage pie. Either way, it's a delicious meal. It starts by making mashed potatoes, and then you put those to the side, and then you heat your filling for the pie. You brown your meat, and you combine all this different spices and different flavors, and then you layer the potatoes on top, and then you bake it in the oven. It's actually a lot easier than it sounds. The toughest part really is making the mashed potatoes, which is what I've been doing for a little while now already. Normally I would use red potatoes for mashed potatoes, but in this case my store only had white potatoes, and they work just as well for mashed potatoes. For other things, not so much. I'll set my heat to medium-high, and I'm going to hit it with some salt, and we're going to let these potatoes boil. And your fork should just go right through them. You know, you put it up against the side, and you should be able to go right through. Yeah, those are done. I'm going to season these exactly the way I would if I were just serving mashed potatoes. 2 tablespoons of butter, which I'm going to add to these potatoes. Right on the top. Then I'm going to hit it with salt and pepper. Remember, potatoes can take an awful lot of salt because it all gets absorbed. You don't want to over salt it, obviously, but it can handle quite a bit, and a fair bit of pepper as well. And since I've already got the butter in there, I will add some milk. Not everybody has one of these. This is a hand mixer. Now, my elders would say, oh no, you just need a potato masher. Mash them by hand, they come out so much better. No. And it takes a ridiculous amount of time. So this is a handy thing to have in any kitchen. Lowest possible setting, lowest possible setting. That looks well and proper blended. And I'll take my implement here and see how they feel. Oh, they feel just fine. And how do they taste? Mashed potatoes the way they ought to be. Cover the potatoes up and set them to the side. Now I'm going to bring out the big guns. This is a Dutch oven, all right? I use it for a lot of things, but I can brown the meat and use it as a baking implement, you know, as a dish to bake in when I'm done. So we're going to put the meat together now. A little olive oil in the pan. You want to let that oil get hot. As I mentioned in an earlier episode, everything tends to move to one side, so you really got to be a little bit careful when you're heating up oil and stuff like that, because one side will get hot faster than the other, and you got to just watch it a little bit. When I learned how to make this, I was so happy, because it's really, you know, it's a comfort dish. It's one of those things, if you've ever been to England and been to a pub and had their cottage pie, or even their shepherd's pie. I like shepherd's pie because I like lamb. I used quite a bit of garlic this time. When sauteing onions, it's always good to put a little bit of salt in there with the onions because it draws out the fluid from the onions. I also have a fair amount of chopped up rosemary, which I'm going to put in there now. The same techniques can be used for so many different things. That's part of what makes cooking fun, is you can make improvements and learn stuff as you go. And it's very hard to ruin a meal if you're using the same basic techniques all the time. All right, and we're adding our meat. Breaking it up. Start combining this and browning the meat. You want to make sure that everything kind of comes together. Really combine the onions and the beef and the garlic together. I got my wine. I got my Lea & Perrins Worcestershire sauce. And something new we're bringing to the party is Gravy Master. Now, for the longest time I was making this without Gravy Master, and I couldn't figure out there was something missing. When I'd been to the English pub and I had cottage pie for the first time and thought, oh my God, this is amazing, I couldn't figure out what that flavor was that was missing. Well, I finally talked to an English chef and they told me Gravy Master. So I always keep some of that in the house. It takes not very much, like probably about a teaspoon maybe to flavor your dish, but without it, you'll miss it. Take another look. Oh, see? There's fluid. Stuff has begun sticking to the bottom, so we got to make sure that we get this thing going without sticking things to the bottom because you don't want it to burn. Now in this case, I'm not really going to measure it, but I'm going to put in a little bit of white wine. It's maybe 1/8 of a cup or so, maybe 1/4 cup. I'm going to combine that in there. And this is white wine with beef. Yes, I know that seems to be a thing for some people, but it adds just the right amount of acid to the party to make it interesting. If you didn't want to use wine, you could use apple cider vinegar. That would work really well. Or any light vinegar that you like. I wouldn't use like a heavy balsamic or something like that. Something that's terribly sweet, I wouldn't use that either. But a little bit of white vinegar or apple cider vinegar would work just as well as the wine. Now I'm going to add some Lea & Perrins to it, some Lea & Perrins to the party. Give that quite a bit. And lastly, the Gravy Master. Ah, the Gravy Master. Okay, not a whole lot. Probably about a teaspoon worth. But aside from imparting a really nice flavor, it also gives a nice brown color. This is looking pretty good. I'd say we've got a good amount of fluid in here. Because remember, we're going to bake this too. So not only is it going to be cooked on top of the stove, but it's also going to be cooked in the oven. And it wouldn't be cottage pie without some corn and some peas. And if you like carrots, you can put those in there too, but I tend to do just corn and peas. As soon as you put the peas in, it drops in temperature by a lot, because I'm just trying to make sure they're evenly distributed somewhat. And since we're going to have to bring it back up to heat anyway, I'll add my corn 2. Yippee, I got corn left over. We're set to simmer. Let's mix this up. Now remember, frozen vegetables are already cooked. You want to combine it so that it's as even as possible. And I'm going to cover it up. And I'm going to let that simmer for a while. Now I'm going to light my oven, set it to 350. I want to let it simmer so that meat juice, wine, Worcestershire sauce, so that everything intensifies in flavor. All the meals I cook, I have done a bunch of times, and once I learned them, I just kept doing them and messing with them and trying to improve them. Sometimes I add things in. If I'm missing something, I leave things out. And that's really all the best parts of cooking. All right, experimentation, having a good time, making sure that you like what you're making. You know, if it doesn't seem quite good enough this time, remember what you did and fix it for next time. And if you're saying that you don't want to have to do that and you want a very strict recipe to follow, I would say, good. There's a million cookbooks out there, all of them, well, not all of them, but most of them very good. And if you follow them to the letter, you'll probably get good results. But part of the joy of doing this for me is experimenting with the flavors and trying to see if I add a little bit more of this, what it tastes like. If I take some of this away, what does it taste like? And that's how I've come to really enjoy cooking, because it's creative. I also like to entertain, and this is a great dish for entertaining because it just looks so fancy when it comes out of the oven. It seems fancy. It's not really fancy. It's actually, peasant food, like all the best food in the world. It's peasant food. But it feels fancy to Americans, and it's, again, it's not hard to do. Oh, man. That's looking very good. Now's when the magic happens. Let's turn it off. Let's get our mashed potatoes over here, which are still nice and warm. Oh, maybe a little too warm. You want this to be kind of flat. And then we're going to start dishing our potatoes into that. Stick of rosemary on top, and that'll bake in, and it's just for show, just for look. And there you have it. That's a shepherd's pie. Now I'm going to stick this in the oven, and we're going to let that cook for about 45 minutes. 350 degrees, 45 minutes. We're not going to cover it up because the potatoes are acting as your lid. Yeah, that's nice and done. Now I'm going to let it cool for a while. Just sort of go all the way to the bottom. And bring up some of this shepherd's pie. Wow, that looks nice, doesn't it? Well, here it is. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Blake's New York Kitchen. Everything's tender. Everything's juicy. It's got a nice rich flavor. Mashed potatoes are delightful. Corn, peas, everything you want in a shepherd's pie. I suggest you try this.